Welcome to the Coffee English Podcast, everyone. We are really happy to have you here today.
Absolutely. It is great to be here for another deep dive.
And uh, just a quick note before we jump in. This deep dive is designed mainly for English learners who are right around the B1 to B2 level.
Right.
So we're going to keep things clear and easy to understand. But honestly, no matter what your English level is, anyone can listen and really enjoy this one.
Definitely. The ideas we are talking about today apply to pretty much everyone living in the modern world.
They really do. Because, well, it is a very funny thing about modern life. Think about this. You finish a long, hard day at work. You are completely exhausted, both physically and mentally.
Completely drained.
Right, and you finally sit down on your incredibly comfortable sofa.
Yeah.
Your only goal, like the only thing you want in the entire world, is simply to rest.
Just to do absolutely nothing.
Exactly. But what actually happens, instead of resting, you find your hand almost automatically reaching into your pocket.
You pull out the phone.
You pull out your phone and you check it. 2 minutes later, you put it down. 2 minutes after that, you pick it up again.
It is a loop.
It is. You check notifications, you scroll through a feed, you put it down, and the cycle just repeats. You are supposed to be relaxing, but you are not relaxed at all.
It is a profound irony, really. I mean, we have engineered these incredibly comfortable climate-controlled environments with, ergonomic furniture. Yeah. Everything is specifically designed to optimize our physical rest.
Yeah, we have the perfect setup.
We do, and yet genuine restorative rest feels almost entirely out of reach for the average person today. We are physically stationary, but neurologically we are just sprinting.
Well, that brings us right into our mission for today. We are exploring a fascinating set of ideas that ask a fundamental, age-old question, but we are applying it directly to this modern absurdity.
Right. The big question
Is a simple life actually better than a luxurious one? We are going to deconstruct exactly why modern society relentlessly pushes us to achieve more, consume more, and just optimize more.
And we really need to look at what we are quietly losing in that process.
Exactly. And how fundamentally redefining our relationship with comfort, our time, and the people around us might just be the ultimate hack for genuine, sustainable happiness.
It is such a critical conversation right now. I mean, that image you painted of the person exhausted on the sofa, locked into that cycle of screen checking, that is not just a quirky modern habit.
No, it feels much deeper than that.
It is. It is a symptom of a society that has effectively lost the blueprint for simplicity. We have sort of equated stillness with being unproductive.
Like if you are resting, you are wasting time.
Exactly. And at the same time, we have equated luxury with peace. But as we are going to see today, both of those equations are fundamentally flawed.
Okay, but before we can even begin to weigh a simple life against a luxurious one, we have to clear up some serious baggage around the word simplicity.
Oh, definitely. People have very strong reactions to that word.
They do. Because when I hear the phrase the simple life, my brain immediately defaults to a very specific, slightly ridiculous image.
Let me guess. Selling everything and moving to the woods.
Yes. I picture someone selling all their earthly possessions, moving to a tiny, unheated wooden cabin in the deep woods, wearing clothes made of rough fabric, and basically eating root vegetables they pulled out of the freezing mud.
Uh-huh, right. That is the classic extreme ascetic trope. And it is a massive barrier to understanding what modern simplicity actually means.
So it is not about giving up everything.
Not at all. People often conflate simplicity with deprivation. They assume it means forced poverty or abandoning everything that makes modern life pleasant.
Which sounds miserable, to be honest.
It does, but in a contemporary context, a simple life has absolutely nothing to do with living in a cabin, and it certainly does not require you to empty your bank account.
So how do we define it then?
Fundamentally, modern simplicity is a strategy of radical focus.
Radical focus, I like that.
Yeah. It is about intentionally directing your limited energy toward what actually gives you a return on investment for your well-being. Things like deep relationships, physical and mental health, quiet hobbies, and unstructured free time.
So it is an active curation process. It is about what you choose to elevate and protect in your life, not just what you throw in the trash.
Precisely. And to understand the value of that focus, we really have to look at the environment we are trying to survive in. Because right now, our environment is defined by profound, relentless noise.
And we are not just talking about loud cars or construction, right?
No, not just auditory noise, though that is part of it. The real threat here is cognitive noise.
Let's break down that concept of cognitive noise, because I think everyone feels it even if they do not have a name for it. What is actually happening in our brains?
Well, cognitive noise is the continuous, unyielding demand on your brain's attention system. Evolutionarily, human attention was designed to be highly selective.
Like paying attention to danger.
Exactly. You paid attention to the rustle in the bushes because it might be a predator. And once that threat passed, your neurological system returned to a baseline of calm.
But today, there are rustling bushes everywhere.
Yes, today, your brain is processing 100 rustling bushes every single minute. It is the unread emails stacking up, the messages pinging on your phone at 9 p.m., the fragmented news headlines, the targeted advertisements on every single screen you look at.
So we are just never turning off.
Never. Your brain is locked in a state of perpetual alertness. Even when your physical body is collapsed on that sofa we talked about, your neurological system is scanning the horizon, anticipating the next thing you need to react to.
It is exactly like a computer where you have 100 browser tabs open at the same time.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right, because the laptop is just sitting there quietly on the desk, not moving.
Mm.
But the cooling fan is screaming, spinning at maximum speed because the internal processor is working itself to death just to keep all those background tabs actively refreshing.
Yes, and when a processor overheats like that, the battery drains exponentially faster.
The body is resting, but the internal processor is overheating.
And that is exactly why you can sit on the couch for 3 hours and stand up feeling more exhausted than when you sat down.
Wow. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Your cognitive battery is being drained by the sheer volume of processing required to simply exist in this hyper-connected state. So, true simplicity, cognitive minimalism is about deliberately closing some of those tabs.
Okay, I hear that.
Yeah.
But realistically, is all of this noise inherently bad?
What do you mean?
Well, if I am checking my phone on the couch, I might be texting my mom, or I might be reading an incredibly insightful article about science or history. Some of that noise is human connection, right? Some of it is learning. We cannot just label all digital interaction as a toxic distraction.
That is a very fair point. The connection and the learning are undeniably positive things. The problem, the pathology, lies in the delivery mechanism and the complete lack of boundaries.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Human beings are entirely capable of reading a great article or having a meaningful conversation with a parent. What our brains are not equipped to do is read that article while simultaneously receiving 3 work emails, swiping away a notification about a natural disaster, and trying to ignore an advertisement for shoes.
I see. It is the layering of it all.
Exactly. The sheer volume and layering of the stimulation drowns out the actual signal. The value of the connection you're making is degraded by the noise surrounding it.
So we are essentially drowning in a shallow ocean of information, and we never actually step onto dry land to dry off.
That is exactly what is happening.
Which begs a massive question. If this constant cognitive noise is so draining and is making us all fundamentally exhausted, why do we opt into it every single day?
Because we choose it, ultimately.
Right. We aren't being forced at gunpoint to be on our phones. And the answer seems to be that the rewards we get for participating in the system, the luxury, the comfort, the convenience there, are incredibly seductive.
They are deeply seductive, and it is crucial not to dismiss that fact. Comfort is objectively pleasant.
It really is.
Sleeping on a high thread count sheet in a temperature-controlled room feels a lot better than sleeping on the ground. Driving a perfectly engineered silent luxury car feels better than walking in the rain. Human beings naturally gravitate toward the removal of physical friction.
I will be the first to admit, I love a nice hotel room. There's a deep, visceral satisfaction in having things function perfectly and luxuriously.
Oh, absolutely. And there is nothing inherently immoral about enjoying a nice hotel room. The trap lies in the psychological leap we make.
The leap.
Yes. We experience that brief burst of pleasure from comfort, and we extrapolate a false equation. We decide that scaling up the luxury will proportionately scale up our baseline happiness forever.
So we think if this nice hotel makes me feel good for a weekend, buying a massive multi-million-dollar house will make me feel permanently ecstatic.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But if you look at the reality of highly affluent demographics, you frequently find profound levels of chronic stress, emotional isolation, and psychological exhaustion.
Which is wild, right? If you have eliminated all the physical friction from your life, if your bed is perfect, your car is perfect, and your meals are prepared for you, why does the stress remain?
It comes down to a biological mechanism known as hedonic adaptation.
Hedonic adaptation. Okay, what is that?
Humans are neurologically wired to adapt to their baseline environments with astonishing speed. And this was actually a brilliant evolutionary survival mechanism.
Oh, so?
Well, if our ancestors found a slightly better cave, they enjoyed it for a moment, but if they stayed perfectly satisfied with that cave, they would stop striving, stop hunting, and eventually die. We are designed to return to a neutral emotional baseline so that we are always motivated to seek the next advantage.
Oh, wow. So our brains essentially delete the joy of what we already have just so we stay hungry for what we do not have.
Exactly. When you acquire something new and luxurious, you experience a massive spike in dopamine. But dopamine is not the chemical of sustained joy. It is the chemical of anticipation and novel reward.
Let's ground this in the real world with a classic example. Think about buying a watch. You finally save up and buy a wildly expensive status symbol watch.
A major purchase.
Right. The day you buy it, you are on top of the world. You are looking at your wrist at stoplights. You are feeling this surge of pride and accomplishment. It genuinely feels like a life-changing acquisition.
It feels amazing.
But what is the actual lifespan of that feeling?
Psychologically speaking, the acute thrill of a major material purchase like that typically dissipates within about 2 weeks.
2 weeks. For something you might have spent a year's salary on.
Yes,
Yeah.
because after 14 days, your brain has fully integrated that object into your new baseline reality. The novelty is completely gone.
So it just becomes normal.
Right. You look down at your wrist, and your brain no longer registers a miraculous achievement. It just registers a tool that tells the time. It provides the exact same utilitarian function as a $20 watch.
It is exactly like building a tolerance to a substance, like coffee. If you drink 1 cup of espresso every morning for the first week, you feel like a superhero.
You have so much energy.
But a month later, that single cup barely gets you out of bed. You need 2 cups, then 3, just to feel normal. We develop a luxury tolerance.
A luxury tolerance. That is a great way to phrase it.
You adapt to the luxury sedan, so now you need the sports car. You adapt to the sports car, so now you need the yacht. You are constantly increasing the dosage just to avoid feeling deprived.
And if you zoom out and look at the macro implications of that, it is terrifying. We have constructed an entire global economic engine that relies on exploiting this specific neurological glitch.
Because the economy needs us to keep buying.
Yes. The economy requires you to believe that the next purchase will finally provide lasting satisfaction, even though your own lived experience proves over and over that it won't. If we adapt to luxury that rapidly, the pursuit of it is not a journey toward a destination. It is an infinite loop.
It is a game designed so that the finish line recedes by 2 feet for every foot you step forward.
Exactly.
But hold on, if this drive for better circumstances is an evolutionary feature, as you said earlier, hasn't it been the engine of all human progress?
It absolutely has.
Right. If humans were perfectly content sitting in a damp cave, finding deep inner peace with a rock and a stick, we never would have developed agriculture. We never would have built the printing press. And we certainly wouldn't have modern medicine. Is this relentless desire for more and better really a bug we need to fix? Or is it just the biological reality of being a successful species?
It is the biological reality that allowed us to become a successful species, without a doubt. The problem today is a mismatch between our ancient hardware and our modern environment.
A mismatch.
Yes. The drive to accumulate resources was highly adaptive when resources were desperately scarce, and accumulating them literally meant surviving the winter. But today, for a significant portion of the population, survival is not the issue. Excess is the issue.
Ah.
The biological alarm bell that once drove us to store grain is now driving us to buy a 5th television or a larger house we do not actually need. The drive itself isn't broken, but applying it in a hyper-abundant modern context is generating massive amounts of unnecessary psychological suffering.
It is like an immune system that is so aggressive it starts attacking healthy tissue because there are no actual viruses left to fight.
That is a brilliant way to look at it.
And modern society, particularly through technology, has essentially weaponized this natural drive. We have taken this biological instinct and turned it into a relentless, exhausting, 24/7 spectator sport.
We really have. And it has fundamentally shifted how we measure our own success. Historically, status was a very localized phenomenon.
What do you mean by localized?
Well, you compared your harvest or your house to the 50 other people in your immediate village. If you were doing reasonably well compared to your neighbors, your brain registered that you were safe and successful.
But now, social media acts as an absolute hyper-accelerant for this comparison.
Oh, completely.
You do not just see your neighbors anymore. You open an app,
Yeah.
and within 30 seconds, your brain processes images of someone vacationing in a private villa in the Maldives, someone else taking delivery of a supercar, and a third person launching a multi-million-dollar company.
It shatters the local scale of comparison. We are now forcing our brains to compete for status against the curated highlights of 8 billion people.
And the key word there is curated.
Yes. It is a profound asymmetry of information. We are intimately aware of our own raw, unedited, mundane reality.
Boring stuff.
Right. The arguments with our spouses, the anxiety about a strange noise the car is making, the sheer boredom of washing dishes. But we are comparing our complete messy reality to someone else's heavily edited, filtered, 2-second peak experience.
It is exactly like looking at a massive movie set from the street. From the front, it looks like a magnificent, opulent, solid marble bank building. It is intimidating.
It looks perfect.
But if you walk around to the back of the set, you realize there is no building. It is just cheap plywood scaffolding, duct tape, and sandbags holding up a painted facade.
A complete illusion.
Social media is an endless street of painted facades. And yet we look at those facades, and we look at our own perfectly fine, functional homes, and we feel a deep sense of inadequacy. We start to devalue our own ordinary routines.
Which is deeply tragic because those ordinary routines, the quiet cup of coffee before the house wakes up, a 20-minute walk in the neighborhood after dinner, the ritual of reading a book in bed, those are not signs of a small or failed life.
They aren't.
No. Psychologically, those predictable, low-stakes routines are the absolute bedrock of emotional stability. They are the anchor that keeps the nervous system regulated.
But here is a thought regarding those facades we see online. We judge the person posting the photo of the supercar. We think they are shallow or just showing off.
Sure, that is the common reaction.
But aren't they ultimately searching for the exact same thing as the person drinking the quiet morning coffee?
How so?
Aren't they just trying to buy a feeling of security, a feeling of belonging, a feeling that they are enough? The underlying goal is identical. They are just using a tool that we know scientifically is going to fail them in 2 weeks.
That is a highly perceptive way to view it. Yes, the core human desire is the same. The person chasing the luxury status symbols is attempting to solve an internal problem with an external variable.
They want the anxiety to stop.
They do. They believe that if they accumulate enough high-status objects, the anxiety of existence will just go away. But the person practicing the quiet routine has realized that the anxiety doesn't disappear through accumulation. It is managed through grounding.
Finding peace in the everyday.
Exactly. They are finding peace in something sustainable, something that doesn't require a constantly moving finish line.
So, if the supercar and the mansion are false finish lines, what is the actual asset we should be trying to accumulate? If we step off that hedonic treadmill, what do we focus on instead?
The answer that emerges, and this fundamentally shifts the entire paradigm of modern success, is that time is the ultimate currency. Time is the only true luxury.
It is the single most valuable non-renewable resource in existence.
It really is. And the modern economy has engineered a spectacular, devastating irony here. We have created a class of highly compensated professionals who work relentlessly to afford incredibly expensive lifestyles, but who have absolutely zero discretionary time to actually inhabit the lives they have built.
It is the executive making $300,000 a year who has a beautiful custom kitchen they have never cooked a meal in,
Right.
a home theater they have never watched a movie in, and a family they only see when they are completely exhausted. They're working to afford a life they have no time to live.
It is the ultimate hollow victory. The data consistently shows that beyond a certain threshold of baseline financial security, once your basic needs and reasonable comforts are met, earning more money provides diminishing returns on your actual happiness.
More money stuff's making you happier.
Exactly. However, reclaiming your time provides a massive compounding return. Having the autonomy to decide what to do with a Tuesday afternoon, having the margin in your schedule to take a walk without constantly checking a watch, having the bandwidth to be fully present with a child that fundamentally alters your lived experience.
But people don't usually realize this early on.
No, it is a realization that typically arrives far too late in life.
Right. Usually people do not grasp this until they are in their 60s or 70s, because as you age, the reality of mortality strips away the illusion. You realize that time is essentially a melting block of ice sitting on the counter.
That is a great image.
It does not matter if you are a billionaire or a barista. You cannot throw cash at that ice cube to stop it from melting. You cannot negotiate with it. You can only decide how you are going to spend the water.
Exactly. The pursuit of endless financial accumulation is inherently anxiety-inducing because it is boundless. There is always someone richer. There is always a bigger
It
number.
never ends.
Never. Simple living, at its core, is a shift in temporal focus. It pulls you out of the hypothetical, anxiety-ridden future and anchors you firmly in the present. It is the radical act of saying, I have enough right now, so I'm going to experience right now.
I have to pause here, though, because anytime we talk about choosing time over money, it can start to sound incredibly out of touch.
Oh, for sure.
Financial stress is brutal. Not knowing how you're going to pay a medical bill or cover rent destroys your mental health. Isn't this philosophy of time as the ultimate luxury deeply privileged? If you are working 2 hourly jobs just to survive, you cannot just casually choose to reclaim your time and take a mindful walk.
That is a vital distinction, and it absolutely must be addressed. A baseline of financial security is the prerequisite for this entire conversation.
You have to be able to pay your bills first.
Yes. Chronic poverty is a state of perpetual emergency. It is inherently traumatizing and exhausting. The philosophy of simplicity is not romanticizing struggle, and it is certainly not telling people in survival mode to just breathe and enjoy the moment.
So who is this for then?
This critique is aimed squarely at the cycle of excessive ambition. It is aimed at the demographic that has already secured their baseline needs, who have enough to be comfortable and safe, but who continue to sacrifice their physical health, their relationships, and their time in a desperate bid to acquire excess.
Purely for status.
Purely for status or simply out of habit, it is about recognizing the point of diminishing returns.
That makes a lot of sense. It is the difference between working hard to build a solid foundation versus endlessly digging a basement until the house collapses on top of you.
Yeah.
So assuming someone is in a position to make that choice, and they decide they want to step back, they want to reclaim their time and escape the noise. How does a brain that is practically vibrating with modern anxiety actually do that? The instinctive answer always seems to be go to nature.
It is a universal human reflex. When the cognitive noise reaches a breaking point, our minds spontaneously generate images of deep forests, isolated mountains, or empty beaches.
Just getting away from it all.
We crave environments that are visually and auditorily completely different from the concrete, the traffic, and the density of the city.
I do this constantly. When my email inbox hits a certain level of chaos, I literally find myself browsing rental cabins near a lake on my phone.
We seek the absolute absence of artificial stimuli, and there is robust science backing this up. Even short durations of exposure to natural environments, just walking in a park with trees, significantly lowers cortisol levels and calms the nervous system.
But there is a catch, isn't there?
There is a massive caveat to this detox process.
Right, and this is where it gets incredibly interesting. We have this romantic idea that we will go to the quiet cabin, and the moment we step out of the car, a wave of profound Zen peace will wash over us.
We expect instant calm.
But there's a well-known anecdote about weekends spent in an isolated, internet-free village, and the immediate psychological reaction to that silence wasn't peace. It was sheer panic and intense boredom.
Yes, the initial shock of disconnection. And this is a profoundly revealing phenomenon. When you remove the smartphone, the notifications, the emails, and the ambient noise of the city, your brain does not immediately relax.
It freaks out.
It panics. It feels deeply uncomfortable.
But why? If silence is what we naturally need, why does it feel so horrible at first?
Because you are experiencing physiological withdrawal. Your brain has adapted to a constant high-frequency drip of dopamine from digital stimulation. You have developed what we might call a high boredom threshold.
A boredom threshold.
Yes. When you abruptly cut off that supply, the silence feels like a void. The discomfort is not actually boredom. It is the agitation of a neurological system demanding its usual fix of stimulation. You do not realize how profoundly overstimulated your baseline is until you are forced to sit in a quiet room with nothing but your own mind.
It is the exact sensation of running on a treadmill at maximum speed for an hour.
Yes, that is a great comparison.
When you finally hit stop and step off onto the solid, stationary floor,
Yeah.
you don't feel stable. You feel dizzy. Your legs still feel like they're spinning. The solid ground feels wrong because your physical system adapted to the moving belt. Your brain is essentially phantom scrolling in the quiet village.
That is precisely the mechanism. But the crucial part of that anecdote is what happens next.
Right, if you stay.
If you can endure that initial phase of withdrawal, if you don't immediately get back in the car and drive until you find cell service, something shifts. Usually within 24 to 48 hours, the neurological baseline resets.
The spinning stops.
The agitation subsides, and it is replaced by a profound, unfamiliar, and deeply restorative calm.
The legs stop spinning. You finally realize you are standing on solid ground.
Yes. And it forces us to reconsider our cultural phobia of boredom. We treat boredom like a critical system failure that must be immediately patched with a screen.
The moment we have to wait in line for 30 seconds, out comes the phone.
Exactly. But boredom, that empty, unstructured cognitive space, is biologically necessary. It is the fertilizer for creativity, problem solving, and emotional processing. It is the gateway you have to pass through to access genuine calm.
I have to wonder, though, is it just a need for dopamine, or are we actually terrified of the silence itself?
What do you mean?
Well, because when the noise stops, the distractions stop. And when the distractions stop, you are suddenly trapped in a room with yourself. You have to face your own anxieties, your unresolved conflicts, the trajectory of your whole life, all the things you were successfully ignoring by being so, quote-unquote, busy. Is this relentless pursuit of luxury and productivity actually just a very expensive coping mechanism to avoid self-reflection?
You have just hit on the philosophical core of the issue. The mathematician Blaise Pascal observed centuries ago that all of humanity's problems stem from our inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
Wow, centuries ago. So this isn't a new problem.
No, the technology is new, but the human avoidance is ancient. Constant busyness is the ultimate psychological shield. If you are always answering emails, always chasing the next promotion, always planning the next luxury purchase, you never have to ask yourself the terrifying question.
Like, am I actually happy?
Exactly. Is this what I want to do with my life? Simplifying your life forces you to drop the shield. It is intimidating, yes, but it is the only path to genuine internal alignment.
And if you do manage to drop the shield, and you make the choice to step off the treadmill, you run headfirst into a massive cultural roadblock.
Ah, the judgment from others.
Right. Society does not look kindly on people who decide they have enough. If you stop aggressively climbing the ladder, the immediate overwhelming stigma applied to you is that you are just lazy.
It is the most persistent and damaging myth regarding the simple life. Our culture is deeply entrenched in the ideology of hustle culture. The prevailing narrative dictates that your worth is directly correlated to your economic output and your visible ambition.
So if you aren't grinding, you are failing.
That is what society tells us. If you choose to work 40 hours, enjoy your evenings, and not upgrade your house, the culture assumes you lack drive, you lack discipline, or you are simply a failure.
But the reality is that simplicity and ambition are not mutually exclusive at all.
They are not. A person can be a highly skilled neurosurgeon or run a very successful small business, or be a dedicated artist while fiercely protecting a simple personal life.
So it is about where you put your energy.
It is purely about the target of the ambition. It is about prioritization. It is the difference between adopting the default goals that society assigns you, wealth, status, visibility, and doing the hard work of figuring out what actually matters to you intrinsically.
It is the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation.
Exactly. Extrinsic motivation is buying the luxury SUV purely because you want the other parents at school to think you are successful. Intrinsic motivation is buying a high-quality set of woodworking tools because you find deep, personal, quiet joy in building furniture, regardless of whether anyone ever sees it.
So you can still buy nice things.
Yes. The philosophy of simplicity does not forbid luxury or high-quality goods. It forbids consuming them merely to manage other people's perceptions of you.
Buying things for the optics is such a fragile way to live because you are essentially outsourcing your self-esteem to the whims of strangers.
You are handing over the keys to your emotional state. If your happiness depends on the validation of your neighbors or your online followers, you will never be at peace because you simply cannot control them. When you align your life with your intrinsic values, your sense of success becomes self-generated and unbreakable.
It makes me think of playing a video game, but using someone else's custom, totally bizarre controller settings.
Oh, that is frustrating.
Right, they have the jump button mapped to the trigger and the run button mapped to the directional pad. No matter how hard you try to play, it is never going to feel fluid or natural. You are going to struggle and be frustrated the entire time because you are trying to operate by their arbitrary rules.
You are fighting the controls.
Exactly. You have to pause the game and map the buttons to what makes sense for your own hands. You have to define your own parameters for success.
That is a phenomenal analogy. And to build on that, think about what happens when you finally map those buttons correctly. You actually play the game much better.
You perform better.
Yes. And this is why simplicity is actually a superpower for genuine ambition. Look at some of the most effective, highly ambitious people in history, scientists, writers, even massive tech founders. They often maintain fiercely minimalist personal routines.
Like wearing the same outfit every day.
Yes. They eat the same meals, wear the same clothes, and keep their social obligations strictly limited.
They aren't doing that because they lack ambition. They are doing it specifically because of their ambition. They are ruthlessly eliminating the cognitive noise of daily decision-making so they can pour 100% of their processing power into their primary goal.
Precisely. Simplicity is not the abandonment of ambition. It is the removal of friction so that true, focused ambition can actually achieve escape velocity. You clear the debris off the runway so the plane can take off.
Okay, so if we clear the runway and we stop chasing the extrinsic validation of luxury watches and status symbols, what actually belongs in the cargo hold?
What really matters?
Yeah, what genuinely provides the lasting, sustainable joy that we are all so desperately looking for?
When you strip away the noise and the marketing, the data and human history point to one unequivocal answer: the depth and quality of our human connections.
Relationships.
Relationships are the fundamental architecture of a meaningful life. The deep conversations, the mutual support, the shared humor, the feeling of being truly seen and understood by another human being. These are the elements that yield a permanent positive impact on our psychological well-being.
And without that connection, the luxury itself becomes completely hollow.
It becomes a gilded cage. You can sit in a 30-room mansion filled with priceless art, but if there is no one there who genuinely cares about your internal state, that mansion will feel like the loneliest place on the planet. The luxury cannot substitute for the biological necessity of tribe and connection.
The economics of memory are so fascinating here, because we frequently try to use money to manufacture significant memories.
We do. We try to buy memories.
We think, oh, I will spend $1,000 on an anniversary dinner at the most exclusive restaurant in the city, and that will be an unforgettable night. But how does human memory actually process that event?
Memory is highly selective, and it prioritizes emotional resonance over financial data. 10 years down the line, neither of you will remember the exact price of the dinner. You will likely forget what the appetizer was.
You probably won't remember the food at all.
Right. The financial cost, the luxury aspect, evaporates from the neurological record almost entirely. What permanently encodes in your brain is the emotional state. You remember if you felt deeply connected. You remember if you laughed until your sides hurt.
And those emotional peaks are almost entirely independent of the setting. The most vivid, warmest memories people hold are usually remarkably simple.
Yes.
It is the late-night conversation in a dingy college dorm room. It is the road trip where the radio broke and you had to sing to each other. It is the absolute, uncontrollable laughter over a silly inside joke while sitting on a cheap, uncomfortable couch.
If we look at this as an investment, the return on investment of an expensive material experience depreciates rapidly. But the ROI of a shared, joyful memory actually appreciates over time.
It grows in value.
It does. The memory of that road trip laugh brings you a dividend of warmth and connection every single time you recall it, even decades later.
It is like an old photograph. The value of the photograph is entirely dependent on the subject matter, the people, the expression on their faces, the emotion captured in that specific fraction of a second.
Without the camera.
Right. It does not matter if the picture was taken with a cheap disposable camera or a $10,000 professional rig. A blurry, grainy photo of your absolute best friend smiling is infinitely more valuable to you than a perfectly crisp, high-resolution, perfectly lit photo of a brick wall. The luxury doesn't make the memory.
Exactly.
Right.
But there's an incredibly common trap in modern relationships where we try to use the gear to compensate for the lack of the subject matter.
What do you mean by that?
When we are exhausted by the cognitive noise and we have no time left, we attempt to buy a shortcut to connection. A parent who works 80 hours a week might buy their child a wildly expensive gaming system to compensate for missing all their soccer games. A partner might buy an expensive piece of jewelry to apologize for being emotionally absent.
We try to substitute the transaction for the presence, and it fundamentally doesn't work.
It never works. Because the human nervous system cannot be tricked by a price tag. It requires the actual, focused, undivided attention of another human being to feel secure and connected.
I hear all of this, And at a core level, I completely agree the connection is paramount. But let me push into the reality of that road trip analogy for a second.
Sure.
Yes, the laughter is what you remember. But realistically, isn't that road trip a lot more fun? And isn't the connection much easier to facilitate if you aren't terrified that your cheap, beat-up car is going to break down on the side of the highway at midnight?
Fair point.
Doesn't a certain level of financial security and perhaps a touch of luxury, like a reliable car, actually protect those memories by removing the stress that would otherwise ruin the mood?
That is the essential nuance, and it perfectly bridges us to the synthesis of this entire philosophy. Simplicity is not a mandate for masochism. Breaking down on the side of the highway is stressful. Having your card declined at dinner is deeply embarrassing and stressful.
And stress kills connection.
Exactly. Chronic stress is the enemy of connection. Therefore, a baseline of financial stability and functional comfort is incredibly valuable because it acts as a buffer against that stress. It creates a secure perimeter within which those relationships can thrive without the interference of survival panic.
So it is about finding the exact point where money stops removing stress and starts creating new stress. Which brings us to the ultimate conclusion of this deep dive. The answer to the tension between simplicity and luxury isn't found at the extreme ends of the spectrum.
No, it is not. The optimal state is not extreme minimalism, where you live in an empty room and own a single spoon. That is just another form of rigid dogma that requires way too much energy to maintain.
And is not the other extreme either.
Right. Nor is it the unchecked, hedonic treadmill of endless luxury, which we know leads to exhaustion and isolation. The answer, as unglamorous as it sounds, is a highly calibrated, intentional balance.
Balance is the hardest thing in the world to achieve because it requires constant active awareness.
It does. It requires you to acknowledge that comfort is good and financial stability is necessary, but to firmly reject the illusion that endlessly chasing status will heal you. The core mechanism of the simple life, once you have established that balanced foundation, is the active, daily practice of appreciation and gratitude for the present moment.
And that strikes right at the heart of the most dangerous psychological trap of modern life, the deferral of happiness.
The deferred life plan. It's a cognitive distortion where we subconsciously convince ourselves that real life and real happiness hasn't started yet. It is always waiting just behind the next major milestone.
Like, I will finally relax and be happy when I get the promotion. I will be happy when we can afford the bigger house. I will be happy when the kids are finally out of college. You are constantly pushing your emotional well-being into the hypothetical future.
And because the future is a horizon line that constantly recedes as you walk toward it, you never actually arrive. You spend your entire life in the waiting room. There is a deeply sobering truth that counteracts this, which is simply, this life mostly consists of ordinary days.
Life mostly consists of ordinary days.
Yeah.
If you actually sit down and do the math, it is startling. 95% of your existence is waking up, brushing your teeth, commuting, doing laundry, making dinner, and going to sleep.
It is the mundane stuff.
The massive milestones, the weddings, the luxury vacations in Europe, the huge promotions, they're tiny, statistically rare spikes on a very long, flat graph.
Therefore, logically, if you cannot figure out a way to extract meaning, peace, and joy from a standard Tuesday morning, you are condemning yourself to being miserable for 95% of your life. True happiness is not the accumulation of extraordinary peaks. It is the ability to inhabit the ordinary baseline with grace and appreciation.
This completely changes the texture of reality if you actually apply it.
Yep.
Think about that ordinary Tuesday morning commute. The default state is tension. You are stressed about the traffic, you are annoyed by the noise, your brain is already projecting forward to a difficult meeting at 10 a.m.
That is the usual state, yes.
But if you shift the lens to active appreciation, if you refuse to defer your life until the weekend, what happens? You might actually notice the exact angle of the morning sunlight hitting the glass buildings. You might really taste the warmth and bitterness of the coffee in your cup. You might feel a flash of genuine gratitude that your car heater works so well on a cold morning.
And that cognitive shift completely alters your internal neurochemistry. You have extracted genuine contentment from a mundane moment without spending a single dollar and without acquiring any new status. You have stepped off the treadmill.
It is exactly like eating a massive multi-course dinner. If you spend the entire meal obsessing over the chocolate cake that is coming for dessert, you're going to ignore the soup, you will rush through the salad, and you will barely chew the main course.
You miss the whole meal.
You will suffer through 90% of the experience just waiting for the sugar at the end. You have to learn how to savor the appetizer. But looking back at everything we have discussed today, do you think it is possible that we just make happiness way too complicated?
In what sense?
We treat it like this incredibly complex, high-stakes puzzle that requires money, status, perfect biohacking, and luxury retreats to solve. But what if happiness is just the gentle, steady background music that has been playing in the room the entire time, but we just couldn't hear it because we were screaming at each other about how to solve the puzzle?
I think that is exactly what happens. We generate the noise that drowns out our own peace. Our natural baseline, when our basic needs are met and we are connected to others, is actually quite calm. By embracing simplicity, by intentionally choosing time over excess, by prioritizing deep connection over broad status, and by anchoring ourselves in the present rather than a hypothetical future, we stop generating the noise. We finally quiet the room enough to hear the music.
So to bring all these pieces together from our journey today, we started by sitting on the couch, exhausted by the cognitive noise of our 100 open mental tabs.
Right.
We examined the powerful allure of luxury and how our evolutionary biology traps us on a hedonic treadmill where the thrill of the new watch or the expensive car vanishes in 2 weeks. We looked at the movie set facades of social media that force us into an unwinnable global competition for status.
And we discovered that the only currency that actually matters is time. The wealth-time paradox of modern life forces us to realize that working endlessly to afford a life we have no time to live is a critical error.
We talked about the brutal withdrawal symptoms of stepping off the stimulation treadmill, the necessity of surviving boredom to reach the quiet on the other side, and the superpower of tuning out extrinsic expectations to focus purely on what intrinsically matters to you.
And ultimately, we were reminded that human connection, the shared laughs, the late-night talks, the emotional resonance is the only investment that truly appreciates. A simple life isn't a lesser life. It is a highly curated life that clears the runway for genuine peace.
Which brings us right back to that sofa. The next time you finish a long day and collapse onto the cushions, try an experiment.
This is a small one.
Leave the phone in the kitchen. Don't turn on the television. Just sit there. Let the withdrawal wash over you for a minute. Let the cooling fan on your brain's processor finally slow down.
It is the most practical first step you can take. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative idea to turn over in your mind.
Oh, I love these. Let's hear it.
We expend massive amounts of energy, money, and anxiety trying to escape the ordinary. We are desperate for extraordinary careers, extraordinary vacations, and extraordinary status. But if, as we have established, the vast, overwhelming majority of human existence happens on random, ordinary Tuesdays, what if aggressively leaning into the mundane is actually the most radical, rebellious act possible? What if the ultimate mastery of life isn't escaping the ordinary, but simply falling completely in love with a quiet Tuesday?
Falling in love with an ordinary Tuesday, that is the perfect note to end on. It is a quiet rebellion, but a profound one. Well, that brings us to the close of today's deep dive here on the Coffee English podcast. But the conversation does not end here. We want to hear from you.
We really do.
Yes, you listening right now. Head down to the comments below and share your perspective. Where do you land on this spectrum? Are you actively trying to simplify your life and reclaim your time? Or do you thrive on the hustle and genuinely enjoy the pursuit of the luxury lifestyle? There are no wrong answers, and we read every single comment. Also, please suggest any new topics, ideas, or fascinating concepts you would like us to unpack in future deep dives.
And if this conversation brought some value to your day or gave you a new way to think about your time, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. And most importantly, recommend the channel to a friend or a colleague who might be running a little too fast on the treadmill and needs a reminder to appreciate their ordinary Tuesday.
Every like and share helps us keep these deep dives going. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time, your ultimate non-renewable luxury with us today. Take care of yourselves, enjoy the quiet moments, and we will see you on the next deep dive.